And then I was just out in the streets being Andrea, just acting like, oh, these choices are so hard. And I didn't have a choice. I had to do what I had to do. No, I made the choices that I made, and I made them from a place of really low self-worth and also a lack of education. I didn't know where to even start creating my own options. Hello, and welcome to the Empress Podcast. I am your host, Jessica, known in the online space as Jess the Empress. I started this podcast to help you be present with yourself, cope with chaos, and simplify your life. I do this by combining psychology, behavioral science, and the tarot. I have a background in mental health, specifically a master's in clinical social work from USC, and I'm a professional tarot reader. So get ready to have a nurturing, creative, and empowering experience with me as we use practical magic. Hey love, before we get to today's episode, I want to ask you to rate and review my podcast. Giving me a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts would mean the world to me. I love knowing who's listening and what everyone is getting from the episode, so please take a moment of your time to share your thoughts, and I look forward to reading your reviews soon. Hey there, coffee lovers. Are you tired of settling for boring coffee? I have a treat for you. Today's episode is brought to you by Heartwork Coffee Bar, your one-stop destination for exceptional coffee experiences. Whether you're a coffee connoisseur or just someone who appreciates a great cup of joe, Heartwork Coffee Bar is here to elevate your coffee game to new heights. At Heartwork Coffee Bar, they take pride in their craft because each batch is carefully roasted to perfection, ensuring that every sip is a symphony of flavor. From the rich and the robust to the light and fruity, they have a coffee blend for every palate. And here's the best part. For you amazing podcast listeners, Heartwork Coffee Bar is offering an exclusive 10% discount on your purchase. Just use the code EMPRESS10 at checkout and you'll save big on your order. Why settle for ordinary when you can indulge in the extraordinary coffee from Heartwork Coffee Bar? Remember to use code EMPRESS10 for that special 10% discount and treat yourself to the coffee experience that you deserve. Don't miss out on this fantastic offer. Thank you so much for tuning in, and thanks to Heartwork Coffee Bar for making today's episode possible. Now go grab your favorite mug, brew a fresh cup, and enjoy the podcast with the perfect companion, Heartwork Coffee Bar. Cheers. Hey, hi, hello. Welcome to the pod. It's your girl, Jess, hanging out with you today. I'm going to get cozy. I'm going to back up a little bit and get cute, get cozy. It doesn't look like I'm leaning on anything because the chair isn't getting picked up in the background. So it looks kind of funny, but let's hang out. Welcome. I'm so happy that you're here. What I wanted to talk about today is actually inspired from the movie The Devil Wears Prada. I was watching this movie like a week ago, and I forgot how much I cannot stand the main character, Andrea. She drives me insane because she's always acting like she doesn't have any choices. And I realized she suffers from this learned helplessness, which is something I think a lot of women struggle with. And I have had this too. And sometimes it rears its ugly head and I have to confront it. But that gave me the idea for the podcast episode, which is talking about setting ourselves up for options, having choices, the importance of having choices. I want to get into all these topics today. So from my philosophy, choices are a representation of freedom. Freedom is something I really, really like. Now, you could take this big esoteric, freedom as in no boundaries and the ability to do whatever you want at any point in time. That's one definition of freedom. From someone who lived a very learned, helpless style type of life, I never had a lot of options, and that was my fault. I wasn't choosing to do things differently. I was creating circumstances, and I had these negative self-beliefs that just kept me trapped. Sometimes I was trapped. And then other times I just wasn't choosing something else because I didn't like my choices. And I feel like that is a lot of the learned helplessness. You think, okay, I don't know what to do, so I'm not going to do anything at all. Instead of taking a moment to ask myself, well, what can I do and what can I learn within this situation to get me out of this place? Because I don't like feeling trapped, And when we recognize that we have choices, we're really tapping into that sense of freedom and empowerment. So, again, those are two things that I really value: freedom for sure. But I think about the choices that I have in my life. And I was reflecting on when I was in my marriage, I didn't feel like I had a lot of choices. Part of that, again, was the learned helplessness and just like the handing over of my power and lots of other things that I did that were like not good for me. And slowly, as time went on, I learned how to take my power back. And I believe that what helped me so much was another group of women, actually. I joined some women's empowerment groups, and it was like really, really helpful to get the reflections of other women and what they were doing basically with their choices. I liked the way that they were spending their money. I liked the way that money was coming to them. I liked the way that they were spending their time. I liked the way that they structured their time. So they, to me, felt like they had a lot of choices. And because of this, I picked up this sense of freedom that they had. And I was like, whoa, I need to take, I need this in my life. So, like, what do I need to do to have this much freedom? And I realized that it was about paying a lot of attention to like what I am doing and what I'm choosing. I wasn't necessarily the most intentional person when I was in my learned helplessness traps. I was just kind of getting blown around, and I had this idea that like things would just sort themselves out and, whatever, I'll figure it out later. It was like a lot of that type of mentality. And then when I was working with my therapist, I had no sense of mastery over things in my life. I was really lacking, again, that feeling of freedom and control at the same time because everything felt so out of control. And then that's kind of like what had reinforced doing nothing because I felt like, well, why do anything? Because I don't have any options, or I don't like the options that I have, so I'm not going to choose them. But if you don't like your options and you're not choosing them, you're actually not a victim of any type of circumstance. Not liking my choices doesn't make me a victim to anything. And when I first started on this journey, I like the journey of choosing something, I would often find myself asking myself the question, like, I don't know what to choose or I don't know where to start. And I learned as time went on that just starting somewhere is better than nowhere because if you don't do anything, you're just going to keep perpetuating the learned helplessness pattern, which is like, that's what I didn't want. So I was like, okay, let me just start something and then just give myself permission to change my mind as I go, right? I don't have to commit to this thing for forever. But if I want change in my life, then like I have to change my circumstances. I can't just keep showing up the same way every day and expecting something different. Like that's not going to work out for me. And I've already been sitting in that and I'm freaking miserable. Like I need the change. So that's when I just started like dabbling in a lot of different things. And I just took the pressure off of myself to not have to commit to things, but I wanted to feel like I had choices and I was more deliberate with my time, with my energy, with my money, and things like that. This goes back to one of my other values, like why I'm talking about it today, is the support of other women. Like I said, in that women's empowerment group, I was just like, whoa, these women are doing what they want with their time and their energy. And I didn't necessarily have a reflection of that when I was like growing up or when I was in my relationship, my marriage. It was like you kind of conform yourself to the other person. That goes back to codependency. And that definitely goes back to learned helplessness because then I was like over prioritizing the other person in my life and not really having like a good sense of myself and what I needed and any of that. But what I also learned about making a bunch of choices, like making a bunch of decisions, is that having everything on the table actually allowed me to be a better decision maker because then I got to like fall into a sense of discerning, well, what do I think about this? Like, what do I really think about this? And what do I really feel about this? So, having a lot of different things to choose from really helped me. Some choices you can make right now include like listening to different podcasts, reading books, getting outside of your community, joining other social groups. All of this can really help you see things differently. And that gives you options that shows you that there's more than just your own way of thinking or your own way of doing. That expands you. That is an amazing place to be because you're operating in the frequency of freedom and choice, right? This idea or this knowing, this energy of like, whoa, there's so much out here. It feels very big and very expansive, which is what I try to go for when I'm making my decisions, that feeling of expandedness versus feeling really small. So, for comparison's sake, remember, all I was doing was making choices that were keeping me small and trapped. Learned helplessness, like, oh, I don't know what to do. I guess I'll do nothing at all. Again, it did not work out for me. I got tired of choosing that. I had to learn how to choose differently. The other thing too is a skill. I believe that learning a skill can be very, very helpful because it could also bring you opportunities to get out of a bad situation or have your own money. And I think this is really, really important for women, particularly women that might be just extra vulnerable in life due to many, many factors. But having a skill can get you out of trouble, and it can also be a way to keep you safe from getting into trouble in the first place. This will also allow you to take more control over your finances or just, again, like your time and energy and the things that are precious to you, because not everybody is deserving of that, or just like all the time wasters that exist out there. It's very easy to get so overwhelmed and just be like, well, I don't know what to do. I'm going to do nothing. Trust me, I've been there. And then I was just out in the streets being Andrea, just acting like, oh, these choices are so hard. And I didn't have a choice. I had to do what I had to do. No, I made the choices that I made, and I made them from a place of really low self-worth and also a lack of education. I didn't know where to even start creating my own options. But you have to turn the energy around. You have to decide to tap into your sense of freedom because it is there. It exists within you. So that's why I recommend getting into girls groups or women's groups, listening to other podcasts, reading books, traveling if that's something that you can do right now, developing a new skill. And then, of course, the self development work. I had to figure out where I was holding on to these old beliefs and these assumptions about the way that the world worked or the way that people were showing up in my life. And I'm a firm believer, if we don't like our circumstances and we can't change them, then we need to change how we see them. So I had to really change the way that I saw my relationship. I had to really change the way that I saw where I was in my life because I was so unhappy, but I kept waiting again for everything to change around me instead of me creating that change and giving myself what I deserve, which are multiple options, which is operating in that sense of freedom and choice, right? Which I think is very expanded, like I mentioned, and very, very exciting. Because what feels better than being like, oh my gosh, I have choices? And there's probably lots of ways that you already have choice in your life, but you might be being a little stingy around those choices because, again, they're not what makes you the most happy, or it doesn't reflect your dream life right now. And I get it. But there's always a way to honor the version of yourself that you want to be in the here and now with everything that's going on. So let's say you open up your refrigerator and you have like three things to choose from. That's still choices. Because you have choices, you are not stuck, you are not limited, you are not a victim. But if you want more choices, you need to put yourself in the place of receiving other things and learning about where are those other doors or windows that you need to go ahead and open and walk through. So that way more can come to you and you can continue to stay in that sense of freedom. So I think it's really important to reflect on like, what are your current choices saying about you? Or what is your lack of choosing saying about you? If you're doing nothing, it might just be letting you know that you're in a little bit of a learned helplessness pattern, which you can absolutely get out of. And as I previously mentioned, the way to get out of it is by taking action on choosing to work with the things that you currently have right now, with like full understanding that this is just a choice in the now moment and more will come to you for you to make a choice with later. And one day you might even find yourself with a lot of choices that are like amazing. And you're like, holy crap, this is even better than I could have imagined. And I think it's really easy to wish that you had more, wish you had better. But remember that thought pattern is just choosing to stay stuck. And I don't believe that we're ever really stuck. I believe that we're where we are for a particular reason so that we can reflect and that we can keep moving forward again and understand, okay, this is an opportunity to tap into my sense of freedom and expand beyond my own current limitations and maybe some of the limitations that people are trying to throw in my way? And so, ever since I really learned how to take that level of accountability for myself and recognizing the choices that I was making and the choices that I did want to make, things really started to shift for me because I found myself being able to feel confident in leaving my marriage and in setting myself up for the path that I'm currently on, which is working from home and doing something that I love. But that didn't come overnight. That clarity, like that knowing of I got to do this and this is the next step. I didn't have that awareness like immediately after choosing to do some things for myself or even acting on the options that I had. It did take a little bit of time. So if you're starting from square one today, no problem. Take a look at the choices that are in front of you and use them. And then reflect. Do you like the outcomes of doing those things, of making those decisions? And if no, what else is possible, what else is within your realm of control versus not control. Throw out what you can't control, focus on what you can control, and just keep going from there. You do have options. We're way more connected in the world today than we ever have been. I'm going to recommend like podcasts, YouTube channels, all those things where people are giving away a lot of free advice or just encouragement, because I think that's also lacking in community. But then that's the last thing I'm going to say. Community care, getting around other people that are empowered, that are flexing their sense of freedom. It is very, very expansive to be around people like that. It'll reflect back to you how you need to get busy creating those opportunities for yourself. As always, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you, and I will talk with you soon. Bye.